Smiths. A whole mess of Mr. Smiths.
World War II had a tremendous impact, of course, on every American.
A mess of Mr. Smiths.
And everyone working in the film business. So there were two kinds of films. There were films that were designed to help audiences escape from the realities of the daily newscasts and the newspapers, and the ones that played on the topicality of the time. Rationing, blackouts, being drafted, or working at a defense plant. All of those things were happening at home, and people could relate to that. Whether it was Bugs Bunny selling bonds, war bonds, or Porky working on an assembly line, they all had some brush with the reality that was going on for Americans at that time.
The tall man with the high hat will be coming down your way. Get your savings out when you hear him shout, any bonds today.
Bugs in particular was a great character because he captured the American spirit so clearly. He's a brash little guy who kind of is fine left to his own devices, but when you pick on him, look out. He'll give it back as good as he gets it.
What's all the hubbub?
What was great was Bugs was an all-American character. He was practically a kid from Brooklyn.
I remember Bob Clampett telling me that Bugs's kind of can-do personality gave the audiences of that day an identification figure. They saw the U.S. as being, fairly peaceful, and actually that was the policy of the U.S. was kind of hands-off until Pearl Harbor, when the U.S. was actually attacked. And then, them's fighting whites or whatever, and you get into the battle.
By 1941, at the end of 1941, we were in World War II, and the character was being really developed in those cartoons, those early cartoons. So he became a big star during that period.
Any stamps, any bonds today.
There were war-themed cartoons, and there was also a sort of a clandestine group of cartoons that were never shown to the public, that were made only for the military, which were the private snafu cartoons.
Situation normal. All fouled up.
The Army brass seemed to understand, when it was explained to them, that this point would get across much better to soldiers if it was done in a humorous way. That would be more effective than having somebody lecture them. And that's where the talents of the Warner Brothers team came into play. Some of them were actually drafted or enlisted and did it under the umbrella of one of the armed forces.
Private Snafu was a kind of a dorky soldier who does everything wrong. And when you see the results of what it is that he's done wrong, supposedly you as an enlisted man go, well, I'm certainly not going to make that mistake.
Each one had a specific purpose. Don't be a fool when it comes to protecting yourself from mosquito bites, because you might get malaria. Don't talk when you're on leave or when you're in a bar at night drinking, because somebody listening might be a spy. Whatever it was, there was always a point.
This message is important. I must fly it double quick.
Disney bid on the series, and they bid too high. So Schlesinger bid, and his bid was lower, because I guess his overhead was lower. So they wound up giving the whole series to him.
This is stuff they did at nights, I guess, because during the day they're pumping out the Warner Brothers cartoons. But they're as well animated and have as much care as any of the Warner Brothers cartoons, and in some cases more.
All the Warner directors, such as Chuck Jones, Bob Clampett, Friz Freleng, worked on them at one point or another. And also, it was some of the first film work done by Theodore Geisel, otherwise known as Dr. Seuss.
And the first couple are done in rhyme, as Dr. Seuss is well known for.
Now, the military secret that I carry in my brain, I keep in safe deposit with a padlock and chain. You bet I got a secret.
Rumors is one of them, where some of the characters look like Dr. Seuss creatures. He's more well known today for doing children's books, but that wasn't really, he was just a well-known cartoonist in that period.
He was over at a place called Fort Western, and which was on Western Avenue, the old Fox studio over there. And that's where Frank Capra's unit, motion picture unit, was. And so we weren't too far away from there, and so I worked with Seuss on the Snafu pictures. We did about, all the directors did a few of them. I think I did 10 or 12 of the 20. And so that's where I first got acquainted with him, and we became friends.
It's been a wonderful evening, and I'd like to stay some more. But I gotta get a move on now. I sail at 4:30.
And they dealt with subjects that were obviously not going to be suitable for a general audience at the time.
Gags that were strictly for the servicemen, not for kids or families.
Through all of that, I think you get the feeling that the cartoon was growing up. That now there were themes and stuff that they're gonna trickle down in some way into the mainstream cartoons.
U.S. Army announces a smashing frontal attack on enemy rear. A smashing frontal attack on enemy rear? Hooray!
The 40s were not a time for quiet reflection and subtlety. The world was not quiet at that time. Entertainment got louder, faster, bolder, brassier.
I'm disgusted. I do all the work, and the fathers get all the credit.
The cartoons got raunchier and more earthy. There was more frenetic action, more of an aggressive kind of thing happening.
Everything got a little bit tougher and a little bit more hard-edged, and the humor became much more brash.
Suddenly, the Warner's cartoons and the tone and tempo and sense of humor of all those guys making them seemed perfectly in tune with the times.
There were a few factors that made, to me and to many critics, made the 40s Warner Brothers cartoons the best ones. One of them is they had bigger budgets. Another one is that Leon Schlesinger was the boss. The war may have made the cartoons a little more edgy, but the biggest reason of all is that Bob Clampett was the top director at that time. He was the one driving that style. He was the lunatic and the most energetic of all the directors, that they had to follow what he was doing, whether they wanted to or not.
Drafty Daffy is just one example. Baby Bottleneck is another. There's so many cartoons of Clampett's in particular that are so out there, so wild, so bizarre. And you have a feeling they wouldn't have existed 5 years earlier or even 5 years later.
They had a golden age during that period. I mean, if you look at the difference in the cartoons Warner's did between, say, 35 and 45, there's an absolutely immense difference. I mean, they grew immensely. It reminds me of Disney when they had Steamboat Willie evolving into Fantasia. So you get Rubber Hose into beautiful full animation in only 10 years. And Warner's went through a similar transformation really fast. And I think the war helped to bring that on.
Warner's really managed to find their identity when contrasted with Disney cartoons, which remained sweet and gentle and beautifully designed.
Greetings, music lovers.
Whereas the Warner cartoons were like the Warner Brothers movies. I mean, they were blue collar, they were fast. That kind of hipness, the kind of World War II hipness, informed a lot of the 50s and 60s.
That was my little time capsule. That was my peek into what it was like in the 1940s. I wasn't alive then, but this was a bit of education for me about what was on people's minds, what they were thinking, what they were doing. And I think that's what's so interesting about them, is they're a mirror of that time.
At the time, caricature was used pretty strongly to humiliate the enemy. So in certain cartoons, the Japanese and German caricatures are particularly grotesque. In some cases, you feel very uncomfortable about seeing that imagery today. But I think overall the cartoons were very effective at doing what they were intended to do, and that's create a spirit of patriotism, keep morale high, and made people laugh at their problems at the end of the day.
Fly, stupid, fly! You'll be shot! Why don't you fly away?